Welcome to a special edition of the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Monday, December 9th. I'm Robert Blaskowitz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joined with me today, Krista Zavanovic, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times, and our special guest, Lieutenant Governor Sue Ellspermann. Thank you for joining us, Lieutenant
My
Governor.
pleasure to be here.
And you're up here to dedicate the new bridge going in place of the old nine-span bridge. Can you talk about that and other infrastructure developments going on in the region and around the state?
Well, looking forward to helping to dedicate that nine-span bridge. It's an important piece of infrastructure, will allow for additional growth up here. And, I am serving on the governor's Blue Ribbon panel for transportation infrastructure, and it is so important that in Indiana we look forward to how we maintain that infrastructure. It is so critical, and probably not a part of the state that it's any more critical than here in Northwest Indiana, where you have so much industry. You have the rail, the roads, the ports, the airports, which have positive developments on them as well. So all of that's important, and I'll get the plug in for that Blue Ribbon panel. Governor set really three objectives. One, take care of what you have, which is important. Finish what you start, which is equally important. And then the piece that our panel will focus on the most is planning for the next 10 years, looking forward. What are those things that will open up the state for even more economic development and improved quality of life?
We've got a big vote coming up on Thursday on the Indiana Expressway, of course, and we know the governor has been very supportive of that. Where else, around the state are we going to be seeing new major highway projects?
We have the transportation, this panel that's been formed has about 25 projects. Of those, 18 or so are roads specific. Some are others, dredging, Burton Harbor. I mean, there are different pieces that are being looked at. So we have on the books, some very good projects across the state that are the kind that range from more localized economic development to very significant regional economic projects. And it's our challenge as a panel to grade those, if you will, rate them, and make a recommendation to the governor and NDOT at what priority there are. As you know, the challenge will be how to find another major moves or whatever to fund that further growth, but to make sure that we know where those best investments are across the state to continue to grow. And there are some promising projects. Having spent the weekend reviewing them, I can tell you that there's some promising projects on the drawing boards, and I think many of those have developed from within the communities. The couple that I was most familiar with and from my neck of the woods certainly were things that local communities said, hey, if we can do this, if we can link this interstate with that interstate, or whatever the scenario, we could see significant economic development. And to the extent we have models that can help predict what that looks like, and it's very helpful.
Okay.
You mentioned major moves, and for some years the lease of the toll road provided this steady stream of money for such infrastructure improvements. That's kind of gone now. So where do you find the money now? Well,
the legislature has put some away in a trust fund. This past budget added some more dollars, but we do think the public-private partnerships are a big piece. We think the model that the Ohio River Bridges is using, which is a toll but availability payments into the future to bring that project. We know we're able to move projects forward that other states can't begin to think of when you think outside the box, and are willing to at least entertain which of these new construction projects, and that's what our current statute allows us to consider, new construction. Are there other options rather than taking it straight out of the budget?
We've been talking about roads, and you mentioned dredging. What about railroads? I mean, we're talking about an extension of the South Shore here. I know in the central Indiana they're talking about a huge commuter rail project. Where do you see that headed?
I think the commuter rails are certainly in our planning. We've got a couple of those projects that are sprinkled in. The transportation projects we'll look at. The central Indiana, I think that is something that they are looking at very carefully in the donut counties and the counties most affected. Is that an investment they're willing to make? Because how is it funded? And I think it's probably a time where it's not just the funding, it's making sure that the public is ready. Is that the choice of the public? Are they? I think we're seeing maybe a growing momentum around that, but there's probably still a lot of discussions to be had to getting a true consensus around it, regardless of the funding dollars, but is that the direction we go as opposed to investing in other places?
On another subject, you're meeting today with East Chicago Mayor
Yes.
Anthony Copeland
Very good.
to talk about the issue of abandoned houses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We just came back from, that was the first meeting of the morning. The mayor has a strong commitment to deal with blight in East Chicago. He shared the plans that he has in terms of some of the commercial development, some of the work that's already been done. The real leverage here in synergy is that our Indiana Housing Community Development Authority is negotiating with U.S. Treasury to free up as much as $75 million of those hardest hit funds that were allotted to Indiana to deploy against blight. We will proportionately spend that across the state by population. So the first round is likely to go to the large counties. So Mayor is very interested getting his program together, but our hope is to really take out the worst of the worst in the communities. Not those that have historical significance, not those that could be rehabbed, but truly the ones that communities really need to get rid of for safety reasons, for crime reasons, for others. So we're looking forward to having that program roll out in the first quarter.
Does this apply also to Gary? I know you met with
Yes,
Mayor Copeland,
yes.
and I just want to add, I graduated from high school with Mayor Copeland, and I can
Yes.
attest to his sincere
Yes.
reform agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we drove around and saw some of the progress already made of the blocks of now green space, or white space today,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
generally green space, which will open up so many new possibilities for East Chicago. And so we commend the mayor's commitment on that. And this program, I will say, this program really bubbled out of some of our early, I think when I spoke with you all last, I may have been beginning or starting to begin my 92 county tour. But every community we went to, we heard, large and small, the challenge of blight in our communities. And our Housing and Community Development Authority listened to that, because my agencies attend a lot of those, and they were the ones that then initiated, based on those early first dozen or so sessions, said, this is something, if we can deploy these dollars, Michigan had already done it, Ohio is looking to do what we're doing, we think this can make a big difference in stabilizing neighborhoods and then bringing up the assessed value of the homes that we have.
Are there any other initiatives that have come from that 92 county listening tour?
Well, probably not as critical to this area as the rural part, but rural broadband has been another area that we are just beginning. We're really more from a private sector approach, bringing the players around the table, rural telephones, rural electric, farm credit, different entities that may be able to help us move that rural broadband out faster. It's going, but it's slow. And if you want economic development, you can't imagine. I always use the example, I have 4 daughters, 23 to 27. Can't imagine them living in a place where they
Right.
don't have good internet access. In fact, they would probably give up their electricity first.
Yeah.
And we can't have vibrancy in those rural communities or on a farm. If you've been on a farm lately, and a combine, about a $500,000 combine, everything is automatic. So,
Well, and
if
the
you're gonna
farmers
have that.
themselves are all involved in commodities
Yes,
trading.
yes.
I mean, it's amazing
Data.
how sophisticated
That's
they are,
correct.
and they need that instant data.
So managing data, both in how they invest, but also in how they run their farm, is very, very important. So, this need for a more ubiquitous, more where you can't tell between rural, urban, and suburban where you are in terms of internet access. So those are some of the things that have come out strongly out of the tour. But there'll be any number. We're working on the report that's going online at the end of the month, but certainly I expect there'll be a number of initiatives and just smaller issues that we've just solved along the way because a community is struggling with this or a business is struggling with that, and that's part of the customer service. Our fifth question always, we did kind of a SWOT analysis with the communities and business and agriculture strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, but the last question was always, how can the state be a better partner? And that's where we need to listen and learn to understand how do we best, like with Mayor Copeland this morning, how do we synergize our activities to make the greatest impact in our communities?
Well, one of that brings up to mind when Rudy Clay was mayor of Gary, one of the things that he had talked to Governor Daniels about and General Umbarger was, can we get the National Guard in to knock down some of these buildings? And at the time, at least, the story was these assets were tied up in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now that those wars are winding down, perhaps there's some opportunities there.
Well, and I think this approach to Blight through Housing and Community Development Authority really gives us another approach, because it's not just about knocking down the building, it's also developing a use, and in our approach it also includes some maintenance of mowing the grass for a couple of years until because you don't want, you really do want to have nice green space when this is all done with, until you've got the reuse application in place. So certainly I think these are areas where we can work closely together.
An emphasis for Governor Pence in the first year of his term has been trying to align education with the needs of the workforce. And you've been involved in the Indiana Works Council. How can you talk a little bit about that? Yes,
there's actually two pieces. I've been involved with I am the vice chair of the Careers Council, which was by statute set up by the General Assembly, asking the governor and I and superintendent of public instruction and higher ed commission and labor and business and Ivy Tech, all of us in DWD, all to come around a table and develop longer term pathway strategies to ensure that we had good career opportunities for our graduates. I'm now chairing the talent development committee that will launch. We have a number of key initiatives, or I'd say goals, to pursue of how do we really align that talent to the jobs that are here. And so our team will be meeting later this month and then beginning heavy lifting first of the year to develop a plan on really what I'm interested in, what are the best practices out there across the state that are already working or beginning to work, what can we learn nationally, but we know we can better align. You see it probably most directly with the Ivy Tech college system and the Vincennes universities, where they're working very closely with business, whether it's with the steel industry, with the steel workers of tomorrow kinds of programs. In southern Indiana, they're working with Toyota with the certified production worker programs, where those individuals can come out and be prepared and qualified for a job that's already in their community. So I think we have to do more of that, of looking at what are those business needs across our state, and really make sure that we have the right kind of pipeline from our high school all the way through our four-year institutions into those businesses. And it's a tough one. My husband is a high school assistant principal, and he'll say, well, if business would just tell us what they need. Well, that's very difficult.
That was my question, that how do you reach into the high schools? Sure. Because I know my kids graduated from Munster High School, and it was very focused on college.
Yes.
And I'm not saying they should reintroduce shop classes the way we had it years ago, but on the other hand, there was really very little acknowledgement of or assistance to students who maybe weren't ready for college, didn't want to go to college. I mean, even in Munster, there was a swath of kids who, though bright, were just not inclined for college, and there really was nothing for them. Their families had to, on their own, go forth and try and find those positions and opportunities.
That's where the direction of the governor's top strategy as we came in was developing the Indiana Regional Works Councils, which are now stood up in parallel to the WIBs across the state, with the intent of really aligning our high school through those mid-skill kinds of jobs to make sure that whether it's 30%, 40%, whatever percentage of young people that really do want to do a career that is of a technician kind of arena, something,
or an apprenticeship.
Apprenticeships, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Those are, we've said in that area, those should not be one size fits all across the state. Certainly Northwest Indiana has some unique needs with with BP and U.S. Steel and ArcelorMittal. You've got a whole set of skills that you need up here that look somewhat different than maybe in Southwest Indiana, where we may need some automotive workers, but we also need agriculture. We need some other areas of skill. So those regional works councils really are to try to bridge that working, and those councils are educators, high school educators, alongside the regional businesses. And they have just been working a couple months now. They're up as of the new budget session. They just came up this fall, so we're looking forward to the developments that those regions, I think there's a couple regions that maybe a bit ahead where they had some Lilly grants and others that funded some earlier
We have a
initiatives.
good educational roundtable.
So that will
has
help. So those learnings will help springboard you more quickly. But the intent is then to go back, as you said, it's not VOTEC of the past, but what kind of training, what kind of career and technical training should we be offering in the high schools? And there are dollars in the budget to help do that. Probably never enough, but a good start to figure out how we go forward.
I'm going to differ with you, Chris, on the shop classes. When you look at kids today, they don't have the role models that they used to have in their families.
The grease monkey uncle, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe the shop classes would be a good point, so that you learn basic repair skills.
But
what
I
to do
think they're there at Ivy Tech and other places.
Well, yes,
if
but what about
families
at the
investigated, they would have kids go to high school in the morning and then to their Ivy Tech or their chef training or whatever in the afternoon. But my only point was that the guidance counselors, really, that was an afterthought for them. And no criticism of them. They have 400 kids they're trying to get into college, and it's a coup for the school to have the good colleges, but is it, there's a swath missing of kids,
And
was my only.
There are we have career centers across the state as well.
Right.
That have done a great job. And many of those, when you said about the small engines, Cummins in the Columbus area has donated a number of their large engines for the students to learn on, and those are skills that when they go out, they will have a great job.
Right.
Cummins, it'll be more than a middle class income. It'll be a very nice income and great career prospects moving forward. And I think, but we'll also want to open our mind to some of the computer-related technologies and other things that are great things. Exposing students to writing computer apps in high school is kind of like falling off of a log for them.
Right.
Not so much for some of us, but
Right.
they're very primed to do, and there are real jobs out there that those skills will be very valued. So we do have to relearn how to do that career in technical ed, and I think Indiana is being viewed as a leader because we weren't the only ones who went down that path where we thought 100% need to go to college. We now understand that it is the right skills. Let's get the certifications first, then the 2 years and the 4 years, and we know that those 2 years can matriculate to 4 years down the road if they so choose. So we have to have a more comprehensive view of what that looks like in workforce.
And at the same time, there's the challenge of keeping our college graduates in Indiana and not
Thank
having
you. That was my other point I wanted. Right.
Which on the other end of the spectrum.
Exactly.
Having those high-skilled, high-tech jobs.
Well,
future growth jobs.
So the other committee parallel to my talent development committee is Victor Smith, our Secretary of Commerce, is chairing that future need, looking at the future as we look at the kinds of companies that we want to grow in Indiana, those high-tech jobs, helping us project out, because that's a hard thing to say. How many scientists, how many of a particular skill set do we need in those high-tech?
My friends that went to Purdue and got their engineering degrees are off in other states doing work.
Mine too.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that there are opportunities to bring them back here? And as we're attracting, certainly we want to have opportunities for those that are still here, and maybe we'll create enough opportunities to invite your friends back as well, because I think that's a talent that we have created here in this state. We educated them. We made quite an investment as a state, and families, as parents, as we are of children. We'd love to have good opportunities for those young people to come back and stay here in Indiana.
Right. Well, you touched on farmers earlier, and you've recently named a new agriculture director, Ted McKinney. Can you tell us a little bit about him and what he's going to bring to the agriculture business in the state?
He will join us actively in January. As you may know, our existing director of agriculture is going on to do missionary work in Liberia now. What a higher calling could you have than her and her husband? And that missionary work is bringing good agricultural practices to Liberia. So I don't think we could complain too much about where she was heading. But Ted is a great talent out of agriculture. Aggie Kahn out of Purdue. By the way, he was Purdue Pete. You know who Purdue Pete is, right? Well, okay, you don't get any higher than that as far as a person's integrity than being Purdue Pete back in the day. But he has spent most of his career with Elanco and Dow AgriSciences, in addition to being a production farmer in his evening and family jobs. But that Elanco animal science work, the Dow Agro from the plant science work, really melds in perfectly with our Food and Ag Innovation Initiative that we're doing, which is to bring the related startups, innovation companies that will work from the genetics side to precision manufacturing all the way through food processing. And Ted, in his government affairs, industrial relations, all the different roles he's played in Dow Agro and Elanco, really has a great national and international view for agriculture. So we want to grow the innovation side in Indiana. We want to grow the international opportunities, and we think Ted will be a great leader for us across the state.
Great.
Well, that's all the time we have. We thank you for joining us today, and we thank you for watching, and we'll be back later this week with another Political Roundtable. Thanks for watching.